Hayley Mills is with us now. Hello.
Good morning, Charlie. Hello, Sally.
Do you know, I was just, I don't know if whether you turned your eye, when you see those films and you're 13 years old?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me how old I was.
No, never
30?
do that. You're 13 years old and you're just this child star actor. What do you see when you look at it now with what you know about what happened?
It's another life. It's another life. In a way, it's another person. It's the same person. And I do look at it, I must say, I look at, the old movies and things with gratitude, first of all. And also, I'm so happy that my grandchildren can see those movies because they're fun and they're funny and they enjoy them. So, that's a real little gift, bonus for me.
And is that how you're able to get your head around seeing yourself as a child in these films, where you think, almost you trick yourself thinking that is someone else, it's not me?
In a sense, yes, it is. And yet it isn't,
So at a very tender age, 12, 13 years old. And
yes.
Yeah, go on,
Sorry to interrupt
me. Go on,
Charlie.
do it.
It was actually 6.
6 films.
Yes.
So, and then I think maybe there was a meeting before with Walt Disney, with the man himself. And I know you describe in the book going into the office, his office.
Yes.
Just what was he like? And how was he with you?
He was a darling. He was a real darling. He was a tough businessman, but he was very warm, very real, very genuine. He loved children. He was a good listener. And, of course, when you say going into his office, I went into his office like a few years ago, and the office had been completely put back together again. It was as it was when he was head of the studio, and I used to go and visit him there as a child. It was an extraordinary experience. It really was going back in time, something we all long to be able to do, to go back and experience life exactly how it was back then. So that was really fascinating. And then I was able to go to the archive department and go through all the folders and letters and memos and things like that.
About you?
Yes, all my old movies. And letters that my parents, particularly my mother, wrote to Walt Disney. Letters that I wrote to Walt Disney. Letters that he wrote to... I was like, what a treasure trove. And I discovered things that I didn't even know,
Go on, what did you find out?
Yeah, that was a catalyst for writing that.
And when you say it was another time, and we watch the films that you were in that, as you were so young, it transports you back to that time. And I think watching them now, it's almost like an escape from the real world, isn't it? Is that why they have continued to be so successful and in lots of ways relevant for children?
Yes, I think so. And Walt Disney always tried to he was very positive. In fact, I remember asking him once about, his films were very positive, and some rather corny question like, what is the message in your films? And he said to me, I always try to show people the best in themselves. And that's a wonderful thing, ethos. And that is what he did. And of course, films like The Parent Trap did have a lot to say to kids at that time, because divorce was just starting to be available. And it showed 2 kids taking charge and making sense of the mess that the grown-ups in their lives had made of their lives. And it's funny, and it's well-directed, and he cast them so well. There I was, a child with barely any experience, surrounded by these fantastic Oscar-winning actors and actresses like Jane Wyman and Maureen O'Hara and Paul Newman, not Paul Newman, I was in love with him, that's another story.
You can't just say that and get away with it. I'm very happy for you to do some shameless name dropping because there was a time, I made a little note here. It was, you went to a 17th birthday party and it was Michael Douglas's party.
Yes.
And there's you doing the twist, as would have been the dance at the time with Michael Douglas.
Yes.
And then Paul Newman walks in. Is that right?
Yes, he did. That's right. And he had a paper bag on his right hand. And he'd just come off his motorbike, and he put his hand out, and of course he'd done terrible things to his hand. So he opened up the paper bag, and we were all allowed to have a look inside. It wasn't a pretty sight. Yes, I know, I did. I met some absolutely fascinating, wonderful people, as well as working with them.
But I have to ask one quick question. Did you tell Paul Newman you were in love with him at that point?
No, I didn't. No, I don't think he would have been very interested.
Now, so you, for people that don't know, you come, of course, from a film background. John Mills, so John Mills was your dad, and so you had that was part of your life as you were growing up, wasn't it? Going around all around the world, movie sets, and mixing with that era of film stars.
Yes, absolutely. And that's another reason why I wanted to write this book, was not just to go back and kind of try to make sense of my own life, but to remember that world that really has gone. I turned up in Hollywood just at the very end of its glory days. Someone described it as a lost empire, and it was, because when, begging your pardon, television arrived, it really did change Hollywood.
Because we know too much about people? What was it? What was it that changed?
Well, a lot of the old ways of being and doing and working finished. A lot of the old establishments, there were places, where the stars used to go and live, because they didn't live in Hollywood. They would visit Hollywood while they were making movies. So places like the Garden of Allah and the Coconut Grove, places like that, all disappeared. And I saw them. I went there, and then the next year I'd go, and then they would have disappeared, and a parking lot would have turned up, and a bank, and so things were changing before my very eyes, as they are today. Of course, we're living through a tremendous change.
Can I just push you towards one anecdote?
Yes.
You could tease us with it if you like, but you're set up with a date for an event.
Yes.
And you're set up with George Harrison,
yes,
who is at the peak of Beatle fame, and you're waiting at home for him to turn up.
Yes.
Can you just pick up the tale?
I did actually, thank goodness, write about this extensively in my journal, as one would. It was my mother who sent me up. I was horrified. And George said yes, and how could he say no? And the whole house was in a complete uproar. And then suddenly there was George Harrison standing in the hall with his hands in his pockets and all that wonderful hair, And I went down the stairs, my knees shaking, went off in his black E-Type Jaguar, down to Henley to a charity event. Richard Todd used to do it every year, very, very marvellous actor. And, it really was extraordinary experience being with George, because he had such a magnetic quality. And it wasn't just because he was a Beatle. That helped, of course. But there was something extraordinary about George. He was very composed. He was very calm. And people were just drawn to him. Then we went to the cinema. There was a showing of a movie. Can't remember what now. Anyway, I never saw it because there were so many people rushing. The charity was for the Red Cross night. We thought when we got into the cinema, away from the screaming girls trying to tear our clothes off our backs, that we'd be comfy and safe. But then the Red Cross landed on us, with elbows in our faces and stomachs, and somebody knelt on my lap. Anyway, then the film started, and then I'm going on too long. If I am, please stop me.
No, keep going.
And then the film began, and we thought, good, we can watch the film now. But no, then people were crawling up the aisle with their autograph books in their teeth to get at George. Wow. And then it was over, and I'll try and cut to the chase. And then I was back in that wonderful E-Type with him going down the road. And now we've got a bit of a bond because we've been through something. And I've experienced a little bit of what he went through. He hadn't gone to America yet, so it hadn't hit the peak of Beatlemania. So we get back to my home where we were living in Richmond, and my dad opened the door at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there we were standing there. I'm standing there with George Harrison, who I really was in love with, and my dad said, would you like to come in for scrambled eggs? So George said, oh, yes, I'd like that. So we went down to the kitchen. I won't do a Liverpool accent. I wouldn't dream of it, not here. And my dad made scrambled eggs, which I'd never seen him do before in my entire life. And then George got up and said, well, I've got to rush now because I'm moving home at 4:30 with Ringo. The police are giving us an escort. And he left. Years and years later, I met George and his lovely wife Olivia at the Chelsea Flower Show. And we remembered that night and laughed about that night. And he told me then one of his favourite memories of all time was having scrambled eggs cooked for him by John Mills at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Do you know what you've given us? You've not only given us all sorts of timing problems, because your anecdote is
far too long,
but glorious, all the more glorious for it, because it's a little snapshot of a time and place that only you know. And so many more of those stories in the book as well. It's been lovely seeing you here today. Thank you very much.
Lovely to
really
be with
lovely.
you, Charlie.
Thank you so
Sally.
much. Thank you.
Forever Young is Hayley's autobiography.
That is a great story.
It's a great story. you can't rush a story like that. We all agree.
You gave me the thingy.
Yes, I led you there, and there we go.
I said keep going.
No, we've loved it. No sorry involved. We're all happy.
Really?
Yes, we love it.
Oh, bless
definitely.
you. I'll go.
Wait for just a moment. You're all right. You don't have to rush.
We've got some amazing news to tell you about, so stay right there. Don't go anywhere.